Hi, I'm Steve Moriarty from MoreGems.com. Today's video will be about producing a Cabochon opal from this material, the Wilo Ethiopian opal. Ethiopian opal was discovered in 2007, and I've been working with this material since about 2012. It is a hydrophane material, so it has some different characteristics than other opals. The cabbing process starts with a Dremel tool to remove the parent rock that's around the opal, and then we'll go downstairs and work on the Cabochon equipment and show you the full process of cabbing a Wilo opal. So let me show you some of the Wilo opal that we've purchased recently from our Ethiopian supplier. This is the material. These are actually very select pieces, and I say that because often this parent rock that's on the material can be half of the entire rock, but these are all nice clean pieces. You know, this one has almost no parent rock on it. You know, this has a little, as this big piece does. So the Ethiopian opal is a hydrophane opal, which means it likes water. So if we were to put this piece in water, it would soak up water to the point that this piece loses all its color, becomes highly transparent, and once you let it dry out, the color comes back. So that's the nature of the hydrophane characteristic. It's a good characteristic from the standpoint that these will not craze. You know, there are many sources of Australian opal and the opal that's out west in Nevada that once it starts drying out, it will craze on you, which is small cracks that start to form in the material, and it can totally destroy the opal. Good Australian material, that's not a problem with, and it's not a problem with the Ethiopian hydrophane material. So you can cut it, and there's no risk in the future of it actually crazing on you. So that's the good part of the hydrophane characteristic. The negative is that it can absorb oils, so you want to avoid oils, hairsprays, perfumes getting on it. So you have to take a little care with it, because like the water absorbs into the material, the oil can also absorb into the material, and it will cause problems that you may not be able to resolve. So you have to be a little careful and understand that characteristic of this material. So when you look at Ethiopian material, there's a wide range of body colors. You know, you'll see material like this, which is a semi-black, so just a dark base material. And these produce very nice stones. Some of it is more milky, like this is more milk white. And then some of it is highly transparent. So this is crystalline opal. So if you look into it, I mean, you can see right through the material. And this material is good for faceting, and we'll also look for a piece to facet later, but we're after a cabochon right now. So I've selected these pieces we're going to clean up. There's about 100 carats of rough here. So we're going to go over and use the Dremel tool and a diamond bit and clean these up, see what's left, and pick out one for cabbing. This is our first step in the process of cutting these Wilo opals. I use a diamond bit in the fordham. And we want to remove all this brown parent rock that's on it. And I find that once you get started, you want to finish the stone completely, because these do have a tendency to occasionally crack on you. And if sometimes if you don't get all this out, I think it lends to the problem of cracking. You know, I think we have a lot less cracking these days, and I think it's partly because of our suppliers have gotten better knowing what to buy because we've probably dropped from 30 to 40% issues with stones, maybe down to 10%. So I would guess that maybe one of these 5 stones that I'm going to work on could develop a crack. You know, and once they develop a crack, if you cut that crack out, typically they won't crack again. You know, it's just some internal stress in them that as soon as it cracks, it relieves the stress, and you shouldn't have any issues further. Occasionally they crack to the point that it's not usable anymore, but we'll see what happens with these. So I use a fairly coarse diamond bit, and I go at it fairly aggressively. I'm going to have to turn this on too. You know, it's something that you don't want to breathe because a lot of this is silica, and you can develop silicosis if you're not careful. So we've got good ventilation, and you'll see it pulls away all the material. The heat that this creates, it doesn't seem to be a problem. I don't find that the heat has been detrimental. You probably want to be careful not to cut on one place for too long. Because heating all gems can be risky. And you can see sometimes how deep these pockets are. So that one's pretty cleaned up. You know, I tend to try and get it all out because I have seen cracks radiate from material I've left down in one of these deep pockets. So you get a kind of an odd shaped piece of rock, and we'll see what piece we end up cabochoning. It's probably not that one. That one has really nice color. This is a really transparent piece that I would expect might be one to facet. hate those deep pockets. It costs you a lot of material. Alright, so that one again, probably good facet material. That one's really deep. Well, not a whole lot left of that one. It'll still cut a 3/4 carat stone. A really nice color, but that's some of the problems you run into with this material, that those pockets are just so deep and it's hard to tell until you start cutting into it. And then this one has almost nothing, really nothing to cut off. Just gotta find the color, you know, whether there's any color down in this lower section. Not a lot, but really nice opal up there on the top. So this may be the best cabochon we could do. So this is what we've got left of it. You can see the odd shapes you get out of this material just because of those pockets of the parent rock. But there'll be some nice opals when we're done. So next step is down to the cabochon equipment. So we're at the cabbing machine now. One thing you'll notice is I've learned to cab these without dopping them up, without putting a dop stick on them. Many people, probably most people, dop them up. I have learned it this way just because the removal of the dop stick either requires heat in the case of wax, or solvent in the case of epoxies, and most of my life I've used epoxies, so I just started cabbing without using a dop stick. You maybe have more control with the dop stick, but I've learned to do it without, and that's what we're going to show you today. So this machine has 3 wheels on it. This is probably a 260, 400 and a 600, and I'll start on this 400 to get the initial shape of this wheel opal. So this is a little bit of a tricky piece of rough. I mean, we have nice color over here. Not sure in both of these areas just how the color is. And you don't want a stone that has great fire and then no fire on the edge. So hopefully we'll be able to tell just how it is as we preform it. So this is the first time we start using water. And the reason, part of the reason for doing that is when you preform it, once this gets really wet, it's going to be harder to tell what the color is, and that's going to be true of this edge that we're concerned about the color. As it gets wet, you know, these colors are the intensity is going to drop, so it's going to be harder to tell just what the color is. So this is an area of concern over here, just not quite as intense of color. Try and work on the back to get some kind of rounded flat. Yeah. Flattish, but somewhat rounded. deep pocket here to deal with. Now, it's not unusual that you find imperfections on the back of opals. Nice when they aren't there, but some things you can leave. But at least you need a nice straight girdle line. The flatter the back of this is, probably the easier to set. Got a deep pocket here that's going to cost us quite a bit of material. Just trying to get the symmetry right, that the center of the stone, the cab goes up to the center the same most of the way around, or all the way around. So the symmetry's close. I'll move on to the next wheel and work on it a little more and start looking for pockets that I may have missed or imperfections, and then get the shape better and move on to finer and finer grits. So I think this is a 600 wheel that I'm working on now. Try and get the back of this flatter. Slightly domed, but flat makes it easier for setting. So I just want to work on the symmetry. I usually take it like in quarter segments of the stone and try and get the two ends the same, and then try and make a comparison to the other side. Now look at the symmetry across, try and get this dome, this direction the same. So as you can see, there's still some color here. It's turned completely transparent. So it's now hard to tell whether we have any dullness on one side or not. So we just have to wait till it's done and hope for the best. I need to work on the back a little bit. It's still not quite even all the way around. Still got a little divot here. You need to dry it off before you can tell where the imperfections are. Problem there. So the symmetry's looking pretty good. A little flatter on this side. Alright, I think we can move on to the next grit, which will be 1200. I have an in-between. I probably should use that. Just not real happy with the 600 I have. We'll see if the 1200 will do the job for us. So we're moving on to the 1200 grit. I'll see if it's enough to smooth this out. You probably should do a step in between. I'm just haven't been satisfied with the wheels that I have that are 500-600 grit. So we'll see if this will take care of smoothing out these facets and doesn't take too long. Otherwise, we'll step back a step and go to the 600s. So it actually is working pretty well, pretty aggressive. So we'll continue on this 1200. You know, as I'm doing this, I'm doing moderate pressure on the opal. You can press too hard on this material and it can cause fractures in it. getting noisy. Time for a new machine. Something's loose. So just got to take a good close look at the surface. It's easy to miss some little pockets. And you get into the next step of polishing and you got to go back. Like right here is one. So it's looking pretty good, and I think we can go on to the 8,000 lap as soon as I figure out what's making so much noise here. So once you get done working with this 1200, we look at the surface and see that it is generally nice and smooth. There's some little issues in it. Hopefully that one's not too big. And actually, I should go over that one right there, because it's a little deep for 8,000. 8,000 still will do some cutting, but not a whole lot. You get flats like that, it'll take care of that, no problem. So the back needs a little work yet, but back is definitely not as important, but this 8,000 should smooth all that out. Otherwise, I don't see too many divots or anything, but that one I do need to work on before I move on. And that's pretty much all it took to fix that little divot. So let's move on to the 8,000. So we are having an issue, the noise we heard earlier. I've got a belt that's starting to crack. So hopefully we'll get through this stone before that happens. Otherwise we'll have a few days wait to get a new belt. Well, it's looking real good. A few dull spots. One definitely here in the back. So I'm just trying to catch the light above, and kind of, if you look where the light's coming in at, you can get a pretty good idea of just how well finished it is. And I have a 2.5 power visor on, and hopefully that'll do it. Just got a bit of an issue, a little ridge on here. So we're on to the final step, which is cerium oxide on a polypad. These are by Crystallite Corporation, and it acts like felt. And just put the cerium oxide on here, and it's what will polish our cabochon. This is on a flexible wheel on the end of the machine. So we just take some of the cerium oxide, paint it onto the lap. Now we want to make sure that the polishing lap is good and wet. You know, moderate pressure. Again, too much pressure can build up heat suddenly and cause a fracture. Mainly, it usually just fractures the surface a little bit, but you have to recut. So just be careful not to push too hard. And occasionally re-wet the lap. Let's take a look, see how the polish is coming. One thing I try to do that I'm not doing now because we're videoing is wear a mask. This is not the best thing to read. And it's fairly good, but needs some more work. right, well, hope that has it. Maybe just a little work here on the edges, and I think we'll have it done. So sometimes we need to go back a step. You know, these edges on the back side were a little bit liney. So I'm going back to the 8000 and go over them a little bit and then go back and polish. Shouldn't take much. Hopefully that's good enough on that. And I'll go back and finish polishing the rest of it again. So that looks much better. I'm happy with it now, even though it's the back of the stone. You know, it's you like to have the whole thing looking nice and shiny, and it does now. So that's the finish of our cabochon. You know, again, it's lost its color because it's soaked up the water. And probably take 2 or 3 days before that color comes back and we get the natural body color and look of this stone, you know, in that time period. So we'll let this sit around and have a look at it in a couple of days, and we'll talk about what we've got. As it's hydrophane, this will be its wet weight. And as it dries out, the weight should drop, and we'll see in a few days just what the actual weight is, which actually fluctuates with humidity. Here's our finished opal. It weighs approximately 7.5 carats. We started, our wet weight was about 8.5 carats, so we lost about a carat. So about 12% weight loss during the drying period. So happy how it came out, some really great colors in it. Mostly red, greens, and yellows, but also some blues hidden in there. As I expected, a little bit of duller side, but there's color throughout. I mean, it goes color all the way to the girdle. And I'm really happy with the polish. The polish came out really good, and on close inspection, I think it's about as good as I could do. The backside has one little unfinished area, which will be easy to fix, but otherwise it has a really good polish too. Happy with the symmetry. You know, doing it freehand, not the easiest to get total symmetry. And, you know, it's something that pretty difficult to get a perfect cab, but I'm pretty happy with the symmetry and the polish of the stone. The colors, really intense colors that you get in this darker material. You know, whether if this were an Australian opal, would they call it a semi-black? I would guess they would. So just came out really nice. And in addition to that, one of the pieces that we preformed was one that was set aside for faceting, and this is what I got out of it. I got this octagon, that kind of a brilliant style pavilion, and a step-cut crown, mostly greens, yellows, blues, and you get quite a bit of red from the faceting. You know, if you look, the red you see is reflections off the back, reflecting the basic body color of Wheelo opals, which has some orange, reddish orange to it. So happy with this one too. You know, this one has better symmetry because I dopped it up and put it in a machine. So much easier to get a near perfect symmetry out of it. So both stones, really happy with them. You know, the one at 7.5 carat and the this faceted one at 8.5 carat. Thanks for watching this lesson on cabbing opal. If you have any questions or tips, leave them in the comments section. If you have an interest in buying Wheelo opal, check our full selection at MoreGems.com.